Hello, my name is Jeff Chimiolo, and today I'm going to talk about faith. Oddly enough, I've talked about this before with other topics. Let me just talk to it directly today. The definition we're going to use today for faith is the belief in something that you cannot readily prove. Because if you could prove it, actually, it wouldn't require any faith. That's kind of the logic in that. It's kind of along the lines. Faith is a very interesting thing because actually we're asked a lot of times to have faith in things, and it's not just God. It's even though one of the definitions actually does make a reference to it's more of a religious thing. However, it doesn't have to be. Example is a lot of people have faith in the dollar bill, that it's strong, faith in the U.S. economy, faith in people, faith in climate change. Realistically, the only person you can actually have faith in is God. I also add one more thing, faith in the Bible. And the reason I say faith in the Bible is because none of us were around when it was written. The translations, they could say anything at this point. Back in the year 500, they got together and they agreed upon what goes into the Bible. So there's a lot of manuscripts, there's a lot of books that didn't make it. They call those the missing books of the Bible. You want to do a search and look it up because there's a lot more interesting books there that actually explain the Bible better. It not explain the Bible, but actually fills in gaps that are missing. Example is one of them was the story of Noah, story of Moses, oddly enough, when he was a child. You have the story of Jesus when he was a child, story of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel according to Mary. As I said, there's a whole bunch of them that didn't make it because they couldn't agree. And I suspect if you look at the Bible, a lot of it has to do with, women are property. That's the general drift of it all. And I do believe that men and women are equal. So that's there's a disconnect for me for a lot of that. And what's odd actually is in the Old Testament, there's missing books in there too. There's missing books in the New Testament too. As I said, it's not just one or the other. They just couldn't agree, so they didn't bother. Why think too much? Or whatever their agenda was at the time, power-hungry people, so. But I do believe it's everyone's duty to find out the truth. And that's where faith comes in. I strongly encourage anyone who wants to actually go over and read a book or two from the missing books, especially with Jesus as a child. That was actually quite popular because everyone wanted to know this Jesus guy, what did he do when he was a child? It's natural. Just like it's natural to find out, what happened to Mary Magdalene? So there's a lot of books that are missing. There's a book of Sarah, which is an alternative to Revelation. As I said, there's a lot of things that just because they couldn't agree on, they said no. And that's kind of odd and bizarre. But let me briefly talk about my religious history. And I say religious, but let's go religious and spiritual, pick where you want to go. I was born, according to my birth certificate, I was born to Anthony Fisher. And Anthony Fisher was a dark religious person. In other words, used the Bible for bad. He was also, from what I gather, a healer. And he did the cardinal sin. He actually sold his healing powers for money. And actually, anyone who's a healer will know you cannot sell your healing powers. If you do, you lose them. So he lost them eventually. But in the meantime, he actually became a minister. So he went from a used car salesman to a minister. I guess you can talk people into anything. You did. Rumor has it that my biological father was actually his brother, which is my uncle. And that's Walter Fisher. Walter Fisher was a minister, a good minister. he was a good man, but unfortunately, Old Testament, you can't marry. Once you marry into the family, you can't actually marry someone else, and it's kind of bad. So something nefarious was there if I was born from that relationship. But that's fine. Literally, when I was 5 years old, I had a near-death experience, which really changed my life. It actually told, basically from what I gathered, it said, don't listen to any of these people, do what the heck you want to do. Just heck with the control system, just do what you want to do. Because before that, I was actually a very obedient child. And after that, I was a little more rebellious. To the point where I went to a Catholic school, and I was doing good in all my classes except for religion, oddly enough. And on 5th grade, they were going to fail me and had to make me repeat the grade. Or they'll pass me because all my academics were good. I can go to a public school and not a Catholic school. So needless to say, I went to a Catholic school, I was probably better off. I went to a public school, I was probably better off. And I actually enjoyed it there a little bit more because you got to do a lot more things. You got to do metal shop, auto shop, and all these other, electronics is what I liked. So that's what they had at the time. So I enjoyed that stuff, the geeky kind of stuff. But realistically, I managed to skirt a whole bunch of control systems. I somehow, slacked off in high school, barely graduated. I went in the military just to get my high school diploma. Because they made a deal with the Marines to actually, if I got out of boot camp, I'd get my high school diploma. So I did that. So I skirted another, the high school thing. I skirted most of those classes because most of those classes were boring and they did not really actually teach you anything. It's this is our view of life. Just very similar to how religion was. And if you think I'm picking on religion, actually, I went to a Roman Catholic church all summer with my grandparents. Every summer that I wasn't in school. And literally, I got to see Roman Catholic church. Half the time it was in Latin, half the time it was in Polish. In the later years, it actually started becoming in English. But either way, one thing I did note that is you get to see a lot of the symbolism, a lot of snakes, a lot of snakes for snakes representing the devil. So I've learned over the years that I don't really have a lot of faith in organized religion. When the Bible talks about a church, they're talking about a group of people that get together to talk about the same topic, God. It really doesn't talk about me making a physical church, a physical entity that's all it does is a church. And I'll be honest with you, that's why I have more respect for like the Protestants and various other ones, because in the Christian faith, you look at it and you say, well, if you have marital problems, you need to talk to a priest that has never been married. That makes sense. On a Protestant side, you can get married. That's even better because now you can talk about marital problems because you could have them. So I said, I think somewhat the Christian churches have went a little astray. Regardless, let's see. After that, I actually went in the military. I was pretty agnostic in the military. After the military, let's see. My next religious, on and off, I went to various religious depending on who I was dating. I went to, for almost 3 years, I went to a Baptist church because my girlfriend was Baptist. And she actually did not go to church when I met her. She decided to go to church. So me and her went to church, kind of thing. She became secretary of that church. And less than 6 months later, she dropped out of it completely and didn't want to go to church anymore. I guess she saw, the money trail behind, the church. I can't blame her. As I said, it's very hard to have faith in something that man created. And that's what I think when I think about all that. Literally after me and her broke up, I became more spiritual. And so a lot of that didn't take. It all seemed incomplete. Like I was looking for something that was all in one, and none of it was. then slowly I pieced it together that, hey, maybe we need faith in all of this. You look at the universal laws. Even God has to listen to universal laws because that's why he made them. And that's why he enforces them. So even he has to listen to them. Pay attention, look them up. But realistically, the mere fact that religious people generally fight with spiritual people because they think they're, whether they're demons or witches or whatever it may be. Don't get me wrong. There's more than enough Christians who are using the Bible as an offensive weapon to attack people than there is anything else. If you go to church and you hear people mumbling a prayer while everyone else is praying, are you sure they're praying to God and not cursing everyone that's there? Talk to some Satanists. They go to church more than actually your Christians do. And they go to a Christian church more than you do. That's the troubling part about the statistics. But anyway, this is actually about faith. So as I went through a spiritual, about approximately a year and a half ago, I came back to God because nothing made sense anymore. Over the years, my intuition has been very good, very good. I use it in my line of work. I'm a software developer, so I use it even in there, my intuition. And it's red hot, always good. And for some reason, things were not making any sense, like at all. And on YouTube, I started to get these little videos, talk to your guardian, talk to your guardian angel says, da, 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 da. I listened to a couple of those, and one of them said, take it before God. And I sat there, I haven't talked to God in God knows how many years, probably about 30. I said, okay, well, let's give this a try. I bent my knee over the bed and prayed. I said, Lord, I don't get this at all. I don't get any of this, what's going on right now. I said, I prayed 3 consecutive days. I don't understand this. And following day after that, actually on the 4th day, I actually received a YouTube video, and it kind of was God's response, and it was, she lied. Oh, well. And I laughed. Not as long as I didn't read the signs wrong. But basically I asked someone out, and they basically said no. They weren't interested, blah, blah, blah. And there's a little bit bigger story to that, because actually it had to do with witchcraft, but we don't want to talk about witchcraft and faith together. I go, but literally it's basically, the gist of it is, well, she lied. She actually does like you. I go, okay, well, until she corrects that, I can't do a thing, so thank you. And me and God started to rebuild our relationship, or re-put it back together. I wouldn't say rebuild it, because I've always had actually a fairly good relationship with God. I just didn't talk to him very much. I didn't have any real reason to. Which I know sounds horrible, that, you only talk to God when you need him. So that brings me to today. So we went back to God. God said something very interesting to me, and it was, well, you're a righteous man. I go, what? And the first thing that popped in my head is all the kind of bad things I've done in my 30s, 20s, 30s, and then I'm sitting here thinking about this, and I hear, a voice in my head kind of laughing, like a little cackle, like ha 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 ha. I go, and he goes, yeah, that was nothing. I go, 80% of what you've done has always been positive, so you're considered in my eyes a righteous man. I'm like, wow, it shocked me that's the benchmark, and it actually shocked me worse that I scored that high. I go, but I have a tendency to float on the negative and actually say, hey, I don't want to do this, and I have a tendency to overcompensate with positive things, so it makes sense. But what faith means to me, faith is, as I said, is the belief that, it's a belief in something you can't prove. I can't prove God exists. Well, maybe. Throughout my journey, over the years, even actually over the last year, I'd say, I would hear something or think something, it's like, that's crazy. And then a couple days later, proof, Example is I may see a YouTube video that says something. Maybe a tarot reader would say something. I'm like, that's crazy stuff. And then it happens. And then I see it. I physically see it. So, okay, so this is connected. So now I'm at this point connecting dots. Okay, what's connected, what's not connected? And it's crazy, but the Lord talks to us in many ways, not just related to faith. The question really on us is, are we listening? A lot of times in the past, I wasn't really listening. I would listen to my intuition, which is usually my spirit team talking to me, trying to get get the trust there. So they would do that, but not so much God. I didn't listen to God that much. Now I start to listen to God more, and next thing I know, I'm in a faith test. That's what I'm in now. They're going to say, what's a faith test? I'm like, faith test. Faith test is kind of like Job. The way God usually says, Job. Job went through a test to ensure that he had faith in God. That means your life's going to totally stink, and stink for a while. In the last year, I'm homeless and living in my car with my dog. I have no income, no money. However, the Lord does provide with me every day. I fast most of the time, and I have a friend that I worked with that occasionally helps me out when I need it. With laundry, laundry and a shower, and various other things when needed. Sorry about the delay. People were yapping in the background really loud, and basically was starting to come out on this recording. But so largely my needs are met via fasting because I'm overweight anyway, so I kind of lost weight. I've already lost 30 pounds. I've been in the car for 6 months plus. My dog, however, she's lean already, so she can't lose any fat. So we have to go over and walk every day. And literally, we walk approximately 10 to 15 miles a day. 3 times a day, we walk a pretty standard route. And it's going to sound gross and disgusting, but the Lord takes care of her also, because I've found that she'll walk up to a garbage can and sit down there's something in there I want. And lo and behold, in the top, usually there's an empty fast food container with half-eaten hamburger, or the favorite out here is Chick-fil-A, so there's a lot of Chick-fil-A around. A lot of Chick-fil-A nuggets or tenders. So she gets a lot of that. So I said she gets taken care of by God also. And I do appreciate it. Thank you, Lord. But yes, that's a faith test. That really, it's really God's way of saying is, do you trust me? And every now and a sense, I kind of look at, I look at my pocket, I say, I got $1.30. I go, well, I can go buy a loaf of bread, because that's what when I do go eat, I eat Walmart leftover yesterday's loaf of bread, which is 30 cents or so. And you'd be surprised at how much, the dog, walking around with the dog, my spirit team will show me where there's money. So, as I said, manna from heaven. Depends on what you think manna looks like. Looks like different to different people. But literally, my needs are met. My dog's needs are met. It's a faith test. And it's really about being obedient. And not denouncing God, not cursing God. And that's really what the big thing was with Job. Because if you recall, that's what the devil wanted to do. Wanted to make sure that Job would curse God. And that would fail a faith test, because the test is that you are loyal to God. Part of my faith test was God goes over and says, you're not happy with your job. Well, if you don't like it, why don't you quit? I got you. Go ahead and quit. And I quit, and I said, okay, well, I'm not happy. I gave notice. I think I gave actually almost 2 months notice, because we're ending our busy season. So essentially, I ended the busy season. I left the company forever. And at the time, I said I had a pretty good safety net of, I think I had approximately 3 to 4 months worth of money in the bank to transition to a new job. And as I'm looking, God basically said, well, you can't really work a 9 to 5 anymore. I'm like, what? And this is after I spent my last money on rent. And it's like, oh. I was frustrated, I admit. I was frustrated. I was like, argh. I said, Lord, why didn't you tell me this before? How had I done something different? So basically, the Lord wants me to go in a different direction. It's like, okay, well, that's interesting. As much as it was different, I could right now, if I wanted to, I can go out and get a job. Problem is, if I did that, I would be in defiance of God, because God told me not to get a 9 to 5 job. God also told me to rest. He's got something special lined up for me. So we'll see. I believe him. God's word has never returned void. So it's funny that a faith test requires a lot of faith. And really, if you think about it, if you look at, okay, let's look back at the Bible. Since everyone likes the Bible, the apostles constantly were being told by Jesus. Jesus kept telling them, don't you have any faith? Basically rattled it into their head. You got to have faith. You got to have faith. You got to have faith. All the time. So it's not a common thing to have faith. We do walk by what we see. And I said, I do know that God is working on my behalf. And the reason I know that is, whether it be, whatever I see online, whatever videos, whether they're prophetic or whether they're religious, they talk about what's going on with me. And I like, okay, kind of whatever. I kind of ignore it a little bit, and then I'll see it in real life. Something happened, like someone will come up to me and talk to me, like, oh, they just said that a couple weeks ago. Oops, So it becomes very interesting when you realize that all these are connected and all these are real. It's like, okay, well, God is real. Well, you think. So here's what's really the catcher of it all. If you have a near-death experience, you've met God. That's how you know He exists. Everyone else who just goes to church and, we think. I go, people who have a near-death experience have talked to God. And God has sent them back down to do something. That's what people forget. So really, that literally is my story about faith. I'm doing exactly what God wants. I'm in complete obedience. And I'm exactly where God wants me to be. Now, that being said, as I said, faith means a lot of things to a lot of people. Right now, a lot of things. A lot of people worship money. Money's the root of all evil. Well, God's not against money. God is against worshiping money more than Him. He should be the only one you worship, the highest one you worship. Just like they say, when you're married, you worship God and then you worship your wife, kind of, in a way. That's the pecking order. And people kind of forget that. But I pose something to you. Being on a faith test is a very interesting test. Usually it has good rewards at the end, and the worst that could happen is I die right now and I go to heaven anyway. So, but what would you do if God told you right now to quit your job, then sell all your stuff, and then live in your car? Think about it. Would you do it? The answer to that faith question is very simple. It's, do you live in the world or do you live by God? I'm just doing what I'm told. But thank you for listening. And to me, that's faith. As much as people think I don't know anything about faith, there's a lot of faith in my family. Just like my grandmother back in the day, my biological grandmother her, I guess you could say, sister, which would mean my great aunt, I think. She was a nun. So I know all about the nunnery. I call it the nunnery. About the places where the nuns live. Because back in the day, if you had 4 kids, one of them went to be a priest if it was a male, or a female, it went to be a nun. I remember to this day that when my great aunt passed away, all the siblings had to get together to buy her a casket because the church wouldn't pay for it. Because the church for nuns, actually, you take a vow of poverty and chastity. And for priests, it's only chastity. It's not poverty. It's like, that seemed to me as very interesting that there's that kind of double-edged sword right there. And I said, there's many things in life that have turned me off on an organized religion. And it's just really the stupid things that they do. Example is, I have a cousin who, by marriage, that got an annulment after having, 3 kids with the guy and married for like 5 or 6 years. I go, and how is this an annulment again? As I said, I don't get it. To me, it's just more, you give money and you get annulled. It just seems like there's no rhyme or reason to it anymore. As much as God doesn't like, divorce, I think we play a lot of games down here. So, anyway. But that's my synopsis on faith. And I do strongly ask you, please ask yourself something. Ask yourself, if God asked you to do something, would you do it? And as a side note, you may want to go over and look at the missing books of the Bible. So there's a lot of them. A lot of them are very interesting books. And I'll tell you right now, none of them are blasphemous. But I do believe that each book of a religious context, whether it be the Quran, whether it be whatever you're reading, is religiously inspired by God. It's inspired by God. And because it's inspired by God, all paths lead to God. You just got to follow it to the end. Now, Christianity, it seems they like to fight with everybody. Crusades. That's all I got to say on that. But we're back to also a lot of faith to go to the Crusades too. That's a lot of faith in God there. If they declared, the Pope declared a holy war, would you go? I know I wouldn't, but I'm pretty sure that's not what God wants. But as I said, I'm very much a mixture of spiritual and religious. And the reason is, me personally, I find none of them I don't think any of them are accurate. None of them give me a 100% picture of what it is. I go, but when you piece it all together, you do get a much better picture, and it makes a lot more sense. Just another side note, Edgar Casey was the sleeping prophet. He was used to actually, for medical, I think they call it medical, he did a trance and would tell people their medical conditions. One of the things he also did during these trances, he would talk about all kinds of topics. And a lot of times he talked about God and Jesus. And there's a book out there of Edgar Casey's God and Jesus select group of just what those readings. And you may want to read those, because actually those add a lot of clarification to what the Bible actually says. A lot of interesting things, like, it does talk about reincarnation. But then there's missing books that talk about reincarnation too. Reincarnation logically actually comes from the Far East, and they have it right in their books together also. Just like the flood story. That almost all major religions have that same story. So tell me they're not all related. Anyway. But I ask that of you, if you can please go over and look one of them up. One of them that'll interest you. I think there's like 19 or 20 of them. Just pick one or look it up. Book of Enoch is oddly one of them too. And the Book of Enoch describes what period we're going through now. Just like Revelations does. And Revelations, there's another missing book, the Sarah book. And the Sarah book actually talks about the alternate revelations, which is more positive. It's not all doom and gloom. So I don't think everything is doom and gloom right now. Don't get me wrong. If you have faith in the dollar, it's not going to be very good. If you have faith in humanity, it's not going to be very good for any time soon. But please have faith in God, and that should work out for you. And oddly enough, God will tell you who to trust and who not to. And you may want to talk to your spirit team. They will guide you along your path. As I said, this message is probably not for everybody. It's for select people. I say select people as in, I guess you could call it a soul group. We keep throwing labels around like soul tribe and all this other stuff, and we kind of give them a very romantic notion about it. But there's something, I'll call it a soul group. It's very similar to, say, a platoon in the military. It's a platoon full of souls, but each of these souls has a different purpose. And they're all there to learn. They have different ranks, so they have different, standings. But largely, they're all part of this group, and you train together. So that means, you want to learn about not hating somebody. Well, someone in your, quote, soul group is hating on you right now. If I remember right, I vaguely remember hearing a number of like 1,000. Like there's maybe only 1,000 souls you actually come in contact with. The rest are non-playing characters, I guess. They come and they go, but they're not ones that from lifetime to lifetime. It's very controversial, but interesting about that is the same people are the same people you train with, and you constantly train with these people. So, interesting. Soul operations are very interesting things. We're back to a lot of people don't know about them. Some people know, some people don't know. I said I'm not a real fan of them to talk about the soulmates and the soul tribe, because that implies that you're all good friends. Like, well, that's not the case at all. I had a soulmate last lifetime to try to kill me, and she came back he came back this lifetime. Last time she was a she, this time it's a he. He came back this lifetime to kill me again, because he didn't do it last time. Or it could be actually that I killed him last time in defense. But I'm here now, so either way, it's very ironic. But it's kind of like you're playing roles, and you pass the lesson when you pass your role. Example is someone who's hurting somebody. God could ask them to test somebody and hurt them, but usually there's a stipulation of, you can only do it for like 2 years, and after 2 years you got to walk away. And if you don't walk away, you're now guilty of karma offenses. Your soul gets karma. And for anyone who knows anything about karma, karma is punishment or blessing for the soul. That's how your soul learns. If you do something good, you get a blessing. You do something bad, they call it karma, but something negative happens to you. Your car breaks down, whatever. So you kind of feel something negative. You got some positive and negative reinforcement. Anyway, that's faith. Oddly enough, the good karma is actually referred to in the Far East as dharma, and that's the term I usually use because karma has a real negative connotation. But oddly enough, people actually do get good karma, which means you did good so much in your life, you get good back to you. The law of balance comes right back. Law of cycles. Thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day.